Good morning. The Lady Chosen, Book 1 of the Bastion Club by Stephanie Lawrence. We've got our Bastion Club members. Prologue, October 1815. His Royal Highness' straits must be dire indeed if he needs must summon His Britannic Majesty's best simply to bask in the reflected glory. The drawled comment contained more than a little cynicism. Tristram Wayne's fourth Earl of Trentham glanced across the stuffy music room, packed with guests, sycophants, and all manner of toadies at its subject. Yes, ma'am. Come here. Come here. Come here. If you're going to interrupt the reading, you might as well show yourself. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on, little one. Have you come for a reading? We're reading the Bastion Club. We're reading a Regencies. So where were we? Both Tristan and the gentleman standing beside them, Christian Allardyce, Marquis of DEARNE, knew the real stories. They had been there, easing free of the throng. They retreated to the side of the opulent chamber to avoid hearing the artful lies. It was Christian who'd spoken. Actually, Tristan murmured, I'd viewed tonight more in the manner of distraction, a feign, if you will. Christian raised heavy brows. Listen to my stories of England's greatness. Don't worry about the execues empty and the people are starving. Yes, ma'am. Tristan's lips quirked downward. Something like that. Dismissing Prinny and his court, Christian surveyed the others crowding the circular room. It was an all-male company primarily composed of representatives from every major regiment and arm of the services recently active. The chamber was a sea of colorful dress uniforms of braid, polished leather, fur, and even feathers, telling those he chose to stage what mounts to a victory reception in Brighton rather than London, don't you think? I wondered if Desdeal has any say in that. From what I've gathered, our prince is no favorite in London. Yes, ma'am. Just a second here. Tristan smiled vaguely. Indeed, though a gentleman who glanced their way, the men decided against intruding. I saw Deverell at the table. He was seated not far from me. He mentioned that Warnefleet and St. Austell were here too. Yes, ma'am. Come here. If you want to come here, come here. Come here. Come here. You're driving me bonkers. You want to hear Mommy's story? You could go in your sister's bed, but I know your sister would get pissed off at you. You want to go in the bed? You can go in the bed. But it's my sister's bed, Mommy. This is my sister's bed. This is Smokey's bed. She'll kill me if I'm in Smokey's bed. I can't be in Smokey's bed, Mom. Dezeal. Do you know Dezeal? We know who Dezeal is, but the characters won't know who Dezeal is till the end of the series. Well, not actually to the end. All right, to the end of the Bastion Club part, but we will know Dezeal in future books. You can add TREGARTH and Blake. I saw them as well. Saw them arriving. I see Dezeal has only allowed those of us who have sold out to appear. Tristan caught his eye. The smile that was never far from his mobile lips deepened. Can you imagine Dezeal allowing Prinny to identify his most secret of secret operatives? DEARNE, he went by no other name. No honorific was the Foreign Office taskmaster, who from his office buried in the depth of Whitehall managed His British Majesty's foreign spy network, a network that had been instrumental in hiding a victory to England and their allies both in the Peninsula Campaign and more recently at Waterloo. Together with a certain Lord Whitley, his opposite number in the Home Office, DEARNE was responsible for all covert operations both within England and beyond. I didn't realize Tregarth or Blake were in the same boat as we two, and I know of the others only by repute. Christian glanced at Tristan. Are you sure the others are leaving? I know Warfleet and Blake are, for much the same reasons we are. As for the others, it's purely conjecture, but I can't see DEARNE compromising an operative of St. Austell's caliber or Tregarth's or Deverell's, for that matter, just to pander Prinny's lady's whim. True, Christian said. They and their 5 colleagues known to be present had all served their zeal and their country for at least a decade. Christian for nearly 15 years. They'd served in whatever guise they had been required, from nobleman to street sweeper, from clerk to navy. There had been for them only one measure of success, discovering the information they'd been sent behind enemy lines to acquire, and surviving long enough to get it back to DEARNE. I'm going to miss it, Christian said. Aren't we all? Tristan said. Be that as it may, given that we're no longer His Majesty's peril, Christian set his empty glass down on a nearby sideboard. I fail to see why we need to stand here talking when we could be much more comfortable doing the same elsewhere, and without running the risk of having to do the pretty for whichever toady captures us and demands to hear our story. I've always been a partial to the Ship and Anchor. It's very cozy. The Ship and Anchor, then. Dare we leave together, you think? Heads together, talking earnestly in hushed and urgent tones. If we make for the door unobtrusively but determinedly, I can see no reason we shouldn't walk straight through. Leaving the pavilion's bright lit entrance, they emerged onto North Street. Turning right, they walked with the relaxed gait of men who knew where they were going, toward Brighton Square and the lanes beyond. They had headed steadily south toward the sound of sea, soughing in the darkness beyond the shore. Finally, they turned into the Black Lion Street. At the end of the street lay the Channel, the border beyond which they lived most of the past decade. Halting beneath the swaying sign of the Ship and Anchor, they both paused, eyes on the darkness framed by the houses at the end of the street. The smell of the sea, the brine on the wind, the familiar tang of seaweed reached them. Warmth enveloped them when they opened the door. The sound of English voices, the hopped-infused scent of good English ale, both relaxed, an indefinable tension falling from them. Christian walked up to the bar. 2 of your best. The landlord nodded a greeting and quickly pulled the pints. Christian glanced at the half-closed door behind. We'll sit in your snug. The landlord glanced at him, then set the frothing. As to that, sir, you're welcome. I'm sure there's a group of gentlemen in there already, and they might not welcome strangers like. We'll risk it, Christian said. Tristan grinned. He was standing at Christian's shoulder when Christian sent the mug swinging wide. The group gathered about 2 tables pushed together, looked around. 5 pairs of eyes locked on them. 5 grins dawned. Charles St. Austell sat in the back chair at the far end of the table and magnanimously waved them in. You are better men than we. We were about to take bets on how long you'd stand it. So they looked around the room. Christian ALLARDYCE, the eldest and longest serving, had operated in east of France, often in Switzerland, Germany, and other small estates and principalities. With his fairish coloring and facility for languages, he'd been a natural in that sphere. Tristan himself had served more generally, often in the heart of strings in Paris and the major industrial cities. His fluency in French as well as German and Italian, his brown hair, brown eyes, and easy charm had served him and his country well. He'd never crossed paths with Charles St. Austell, the most outwardly flamboyant of the group, with his tumbling black locks and flashing dark blue eyes. Charles was a magnet for ladies and young and old. Half French, he possessed both the tongue and the wit to make the most of his physical attributes. He'd been Dazel's principal operative in the south of France, in Caxcon and Toulouse. Gervase Tregarth, a Cornish with curling brown hair and sharp hazel eyes, had so Tristan spent most of his last decade in Brittany and Normandy. He knew Saint Austell from the past, but in the field they'd never met. Are you back? Are you back? Tony Blake was another scion of an English house who was also half French. Black-haired, black-eyed, he was the most elegant of the group. Yet there was an underlying sharpness beneath the smooth veneer. He was the operative Dazel had most often used to intercept and interfere with the French spy master networks. A hideously dangerous undertaking centered on the northern French ports. That Tony was alive was a testament to his mettle. Jack Warnefleet was outwardly a conundrum. He appeared so overtly English, startling handsome with fair brown hair and hazel eyes. It was hard to imagine he'd been consistently successful in infiltrating all levels of the French shipping and many business deals as well. He was a chameleon, even more than the rest of them, with a cheery, hail fellow, well-met gentility few saw beyond. Deverell was the last man Tristan shook hands with, a personable gentleman with an easy smile, dark brown hair, and greenish eyes. Despite being uncommonly handsome, he possessed the knack of blending in with any group. He had served almost exclusively in Paris and had never been detected. The introductions complete, they sat. The snug was now comfortably. A fire burned cheerfully in one corner as in the flickering light they settled around the table, almost shoulder to shoulder. Saving his first sip of ale, Tristan ran his eye around the table. Outwardly they were all different, yet they were definitely brothers beneath the skin. Each was a gentleman born of some aristocratic lineage. Each possessed similar attributes, abilities, and talents, although the relative balance differed. Most importantly, however, each man was capable of dicing with danger, one who would accept the challenge of life and death engagement without a flicker. Deverell set down his tankard. It's true we've all sold out. There were nods and glances all around. Deverell grinned. Is it polite to inquire why? He looked at Tristan. In your case, I assume ALLARDYCE must now become DEARNE. Warily, Christian inclined his head. Indeed, once my father died, I came into the title. Any choice evaporated. If it hadn't been for Waterloo, I would already be mired in issues pertaining to sheep and cattle, and no doubt leg shackled to boot. That sounds all too familiar. Charles St. Austell looked down at the table. I hadn't expected to inherit. While I was away, both my brothers failed me. Now I am the Earl of LOSTWITHIEL, and so my sister-in-law, and dear mother constantly remind me long overdue at the altar. Jack Warnefleet laughed, not exactly humorously. Entirely unexpected. I joined the club too. The title was expected. It was Patter's, but the house and the blunt came via a great aunt I barely knew existed. So now I've been told I rank on the list of eligibles and can expect to be haunted until I surrender and take wife. Tony Blake made a dismissive sound. At least you don't have a French mother. Believe me, when it comes to hounding one to the altar, they take the cake. I'll drink to that. Charles raised his tankard to Tony. But does that mean you two have returned to these shores to discover yourself encumbered? Courtesy of my father, I became Viscount Torrington. I hoped it would be years yet. What I didn't know was that over the past decade, the Pater had taken an interest in various investments. I'd expected to inherit a decent livelihood. I hadn't expected to succeed a great wealth. But then I discovered the entire town knows it. On my way down here, I stopped briefly in town to call on my godmother. I was nearly mobbed. It was horrendous. It's because we lost so many at Waterloo, Deverell said. I have to confess, I'm in much the same straits Deverill set down as Tankard. I'm no expectations when I left England, only to discover on my return that some distant cousin twice removed had turned up his toes, and I am now Viscount PAIGNTON, with houses, the income, and just like you all, the dire need of a wife. I can manage the land and the funds, but the houses, let alone the social obligations, they're a web far worse than any French plot. And the consequences of failing could drive you to your grave, St. Austell said. Um, I too returned to find myself encumbered with a title, 2 houses, and a hunting box, and considerable wealth. However, both houses are home to an assortment of female great aunts, cousins, and other more distant connections. I inherited from my great uncle, the recently departed Earl of Trentham, who loathed my brother, my grandfather, and also my late father and me. His argument was we were wastrel ne'er-do-wells who came and went as we pleased, traveled the world, and so on. In all fairness, I must say now that I've met my great aunts and their female army, I can see the old boy's point. Tristan's expression grew grim. Consequently, it's his own son died, and his son as well, and he realized I would inherit. He devised a devilish clause to the will. I will inherit title, land, and houses, and wealth for 1 year. But if I fail to marry within that time, I will be left the title, the hand, and the houses, all that's entailed. But the bulk of the wealth, the funds that need to run the house, will be given to various charities. How cruel! That's the devilish heart of it. They remain my pensioners. In my houses, that's now elsewhere for them to go. I could hardly turf them into the street. That was hardly a dastardly thing to do, Gervase said. When's your year up? July. So you've got next season to make your choice. Charles set his tankard down and pushed it away. We were all in large measure in the same boat. If we don't find a wife by then, my sisters, my sister-in-law, and dear mother will drive me demented. It's not going to be plain sailing, I warn you. After escaping my godmother's, I sought refuge in Bodles. He took his head. Bad mistake. Within an hour, not one but 2 gentlemen I've never met before approached and asked me to dinner. Sat on in your club, Jack said. And there was worse. I called at the house and discovered a pile of invitation, literally a foot high. The butler said they started arriving the day after I sent word I'd be down. I warned my godmother I dropped in. Who else has been set upon? And everybody's like, yes! Actually, it's likely to be much worse. A lot of the families are in mourning at the moment, and even if they're in town, they won't be going about the numbers calling about town. They all looked at Tony, who shook his head. Don't know. I didn't wait to find out. But as Deverill says, it must be so. But such mourning will end in good time for next season, and the harpies will be out and about looking for victims. More desperate, more even determined. Hell, Charles said. We're going to be precisely the sort of targets we spent the last decade not being. Silence fell. You know, Charles Austell said, we faced worse before and won. We're all of much of an age. There's what, 5 years between us? We're all facing a similar threat and a similar goal in mind for similar reasons. Why not band together and help each other? Why not, Charles said. One for all and all for one, Gervase. We're experienced enough in strategy. Surely we should approach this like any other engagement. Jack set up. It's not as if we're incompetent with each other. Competition. We are all like to the same degree, but we're all different too. All from different families, different countries, and there's not too few ladies, but too many vying for attentions. That's our problem. I think it's an excellent idea. We all have to wed. I don't know about you, but I'll fight to the last gasp to retain control of my destiny. I will choose my wife. I will not have her foisted by whatever means upon me. Thanks to Tony's fortuitous reconnaissance, we now know the enemy will be waiting ready to pounce the instant we appear. So how are we going to seize this initiative? The same way we always have, Tristan said. Information is key. We share what we learn, dispositions of the enemy, their habits, their practice strategies. We share tactics that warn of any perceived pitfalls. But what if we need first more than anything is a safe refuge. It's always the first thing we put place when we have enemy territory. Before your news, I would have imagined our clubs, but that clearly won't do. No, and our houses are not safe for similar reasons. Tony's right. We need a refuge where we can be certain we're safe, where we can meet and exchange information. Who knows? There might be times it would be to our advantage to conceal our connections with each other, at least socially. We need a club of our own, not to live in, although we might want a few bedchambers in case of need, but a club where we can meet and from which we can plan and conduct our campaigns in safety without having to watch our backs. Not a bolt hole, Charles moves, more a castle, a stronghold in the heart of enemy territory, Deverell said. Without it, we'll be too exposed. We've been away too long, Jeffries crowd. The harpies will fall on us and tie us down if we waltz in the ton unprepared. We've forgotten what it's like if we ever truly knew. Christian looked around the table. We have 5 full months before we need our refuge. If we have it established by the end of February, we'll be able to return to town and slip in past the pickets, disappear whenever we wish. My estate's in Surrey, Tristan said. If we decide on what we want as our stronghold, I can slip into town and make the arrangements without creating any ripples. Someplace close to everywhere, but not too close. It needs to be in an area easily reachable, but not obvious. The fewer in the neighborhood who recognize us, the better. A house, perhaps. They tossed around their requirements and quickly agreed that a house in one of the quieter areas outside but close to Mayfair, yet away from the heart of the town, would serve them best. A house with reception rooms and a space for all of them to congregate, with a room in each that they would meet with ladies if necessary, but the rest of the house be female free, with at least 3 bedchambers in case of need, kitchens and staff quarters, and a staff who understood the requirements. That's it, Jack slapped the table. Here, I give you Prinny and his popularity. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't be here today and wouldn't have the opportunity to make all our futures with much safer. Gentlemen, I give you our club, our bastion, our last bastion against the matchmakers of the ton. Our secure base from which we'll infiltrate, identify, and isolate the lady we want, then take the ton by storm and capture her. The others cheered and thumped the table and rose. I give you the bastion which will allow us to take charge of our destination and rule our hearse, gentlemen. Charles raised his tankard. I give you the Bastion Club. They all roared their approval and drank, and the Bastion Club was born. So the Tristan Weymouth, 4th Earl of Tremouth, reflected that he'd rarely been called a fool. Yet here he stood gazing out of a window at an undoubtedly virtuous lady, indulging in all manner of lustful thoughts. He gets the house, and he's in the house, and he's looking out the window at his neighbor. And he falls in love with his neighbor, and it takes the progression of the book to discover her identity, to discover relationships. She's also being hounded. She's being hounded to sell her place. It turns out people want access to the basement for reasons. It's a little bit of a mystery. It's just awesome. So you have so not only do we have the relationship between Tristan and Lenora, but we also have the mystery of who needs into her house, who's been breaking in, who needs access to her basement, what is possibly in her basement, and what happens to Tristan and Lenora. So we got book 1. Tune in next week for A Gentleman's Honor, followed by A Lady of His Own, A Fine Passion, To Distraction, Beyond Seduction, The Edge of Desire, and Deal's book, Mastered by Love. Those are your Bastion Club. We gotta get through these. And if you could please hit the like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And I hope you have a good day and enjoy these books.